Hello and welcome to Attacking Third, a CBS Sports Soccer podcast. I'm Sandra, Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's show, we've got a supersized episode for everybody. We've got some news and notes to go over in NWSL. We've got to recap San Diego Wave and Houston Dash for you all. We've got a midweek preview to go through for everyone. There's a lot to get into here. So let's just jump in. Before we do, quick reminder to watch all of our episodes and exclusive interviews on YouTube. Subscribe to our page to get notified whenever we go live. youtube.com/attacking third. Make sure you hit it because you don't want to miss what we've got in the pipeline coming up. We had a great interview with Angela Hucles, Magado of Angel City, also former USWNT international. I love that. It was like a reset. It was like a mental. It was great chatting with her, and I can't wait for everybody to access the interview that's coming up soon this week. Stay tuned. Lisa, are you hyped? Are you ready to do this with me?
I'm so excited. There's so much happening in the last couple of days.
We had to break it up. There was so much happening.
Truly nuts with all the news that has happened and that is broke. You just plugged our interview with Angela. It was a fantastic conversation. So definitely stay tuned for when that drops later this week because you're not going to want to miss it. But as always, Sandra, it's just such a pleasure chatting with you daily about all the stuff happening because it is daily, frankly.
Literally, it's every day of my life. Quite frankly, that's the energy. I was laughing a little bit about it because it's like going through the rundown. I was like, there was so much happening that we had to like effectively break it up as best that we could because there was just so much to sort of talk about. There was so much soccer to watch and then B, obviously recap and discuss. So we did go live on Saturday. We recapped some NWSL action for everybody, but we still have to recap San Diego Wave and Houston Dash for everyone and give our sort of thoughts and perspectives on that. See if we made the correct pick or not. We'll find out when we go through the recap. But we also recapped Women's Cup. So please go ahead and check out that episode if you've been unable to sort of keep up with all of the action that's been happening. And we'll go ahead and give the midweek preview and chat a touch on WICC for everyone as well. But before we get into actual game stuff, we got to talk about some news that has been dropping because, again, transfer window's coming up. It's going to be closed very soon. There's still some movement that has happened. We want to chat about that. And clubs are making some moves, making some announcements, let's just say. So the biggest one that we want to start with, because we're so thrilled about this getting finalized and then announced, the NWSL Championship has a home. It's going to be taking place in Audi Field in Washington, D.C. You can catch it on October 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern on CBS in prime time. You can also follow along on Paramount Plus. International viewers can follow along with Twitch. And it's all came to fruition because the league, Ally Financial, and CBS essentially worked together to try to make sure that they got this event on a primetime slot.
Yeah, this is huge news. There have been rumblings that this match was going to be played in DC at Audi Field for a while now, but it is officially out there. And really that 8 p.m. time slot on an Eastern kickoff is fantastic. It's on CBS on prime time, which is something that CBS wants, the league wants, the players wants, the fans wants. It's just a matter of all of those pieces coming together. And there's so much behind the scenes that even I don't understand about these negotiations and how it works. But when we think back to the 2021 NWSL Championship, that was originally supposed to be played in Portland at Providence Park, and it was going to be a 9 a.m. kickoff time, which is incredibly early. And the players were the ones that started lobbying and saying, listen, we need to change this because we need a better time slot for this. So the game got moved from Portland, Oregon to Louisville, Kentucky to be played at Lynn Family Stadium. So it was the same time slot on CBS, but now the game kickoff would be noon for the players. And it was still very early, but much better than a 9 a.m. kickoff. That's like, you've got to wake up at like 4 a.m. or something to get ready for that game. So 8 p.m. kickoff now for this championship game. It's going to be on CBS. It's going to be on Paramount Plus. It'll be on Twitch internationally. CBS made it happen. Ally made it happen. The league made it happen. I know Jessica Berman was in talks, the NWSL commissioner, about how to make this all happen. this is huge for the players, for the league, for everything, and the growth of it. I know a lot of people, once this news dropped this morning, right? Today's Tuesday. It dropped this morning. There's a lot of notes about where the league was in 2013, how attendance was, where you could watch it, if you could watch it online, everything like that up until last year and now this year, which is the 10th year in the NWSL. And they're hoping to sell out Audi Field. They're hoping to do really good numbers on CBS primetime. And that's really the point of it. The fact that this is also considered a neutral location at Audi Field, because it's not determined that Washington will or will not be in the championship. And that's something else that they're also working with the league, whether they wait until they know who's going to be in the playoffs or in the championship to pick a location. But I like this neutral location. I mean, it's close to me on the East Coast. So I like this. And obviously an 8 p.m. kickoff on October 29th, like be there or be square.
Spooky vibes. It's Halloween weekend, y'all. It's gonna be a good one. I'm excited for that. Like all these like other little things around it. You know, it's like it should be treated as such. You know, this is the biggest game of the year for this league every single year that goes by, and to sort of kind of treat it as such, I think is very, very important. I think having that prime time slot helps out immensely. I think there have been kickoffs in the past that have been early afternoon, sort of daytime kickoffs in various facilities in the past. But I like that it's still ultimately a neutral location. Sometimes teams go on ridiculous runs and make that not the case. I mean, Carolina was awarded the championship final and went ahead and was able to make their return back to the championship final. And this one finally being announced in Audi Field after some reporting, I believe via The Athletic, primarily with rumblings about whether this was going to be the facility in which the championship final was held. But now it's all official, and I'm loving like the reaction around it as well. Like everyone's like really excited about this being a primetime slot. Folks are like, you have great folks out in DC, whether it's like Rose Room Collective or other supporters groups who are like trying to give tips on how to prepare for travel for this event. And I love that. Like this is like just one of those moments where like, even if you're just sort of a neutral fan or neutral supporter of the league and its teams and its existence, this is like the type of event where you want to go and try out and treat yourself and support. So exciting times ahead for the championship final. But let's maybe segue a little bit. There is a team that is home to Washington DC, the Washington Spirit. We're going to transition a little bit to some news that came out of the Washington Spirit franchise here. They announced, amidst the slew of United States women's national team's news drops, because the official September friendly roster for the friendlies against Nigeria dropped on Monday. And in between all that, the Spirit went ahead and sent out an 11-worded tweet saying that head coach Kris Ward has been relieved of his duties as head coach. And that was all she wrote. Farewell.
Full stop on that one. This is insane. An 11-word tweet. That's all that the club put out up until this point of our recording, Tuesday early afternoon. There still has not been word. The league has not put out a statement yet. There really hasn't been anything. And I mean, there's so many different layers to kind of dissect about this conversation, about this. Washington is 1-9-6 this season. They're sitting in 11th place. They're only ahead of Gotham FC at this point in the standings. They've really, really struggled. It's a 15-game streak of no wins. They won their first game in the regular season, and that's been it. So they've been on a bit of a struggle bus. They've also had a lot of games in quick succession at the start of this season. And the fact that Kris Ward is now out of this role maybe isn't incredibly surprising, but how it happened to me is just shocking because of this single sentence tweet that came out and no other comments about it. No why. There's no press release from the club. There's nothing coming out from the league at this point. And that's what's just truly shocking to me. Even if it's just, hey, this was a mutual agreement. It's based on performance. This is it. Like, hey, he's going to go with 6 games left in the season. I think that the fans deserve to know that, just based on everything we went through in the league last year with coaches coming out about this. But this is a coach in Kris Ward that joined the Spirit years ago as an analytics and player performance development coach. Last August, he was named the acting head coach after former Richie Burke was dismissed and fired from his role as head coach. And Ward led Washington Spirit to the club's first ever NWSL Championship in 2021. Yeah. Then in December, he was hired on as the full-time coach. And now towards the end of August, they say goodbye to him. And he is, quote, relieved of his duties as head coach. Did this shock you, Sandra?
I don't know if the firing of a coach who has had a pretty abysmal record is shocking. I think what was most shocking about it again was just sort of the announcement of it, and it's just sort of like the perception around that is just, there's, for lack of a better word, it's just weird to me. If it's a combination of something where it's like, hey, they've had an abysmal record this year. They haven't had a win in forever. They're in second to last place. And even just being second to last place, they've mostly been the bottom half of the table for the entirety of the regular season. If it's, and then something like that, if it leads to perhaps maybe losing a little bit of the locker room a little bit, if it's a combination of all those things, that's of course understandable. You're going to have those conversations with your head coach and probably reach that conclusion. But
I mean, look what happened.
The announcement of it for me.
Look what happened at Gotham. It was, hey, we've reached an agreement. We're not
back
winning.
To back.
Yeah.
It's like, coach, it's like, here's the coaches who have been, having a difficult time this season. And now those conversations are obviously being had. But, even with that, like I said, it's like the sort of sharing of the information, or the revealing of the news is what sort of throws me off a little bit. I think even with all of those combined things, right? The poor record, the questionable performances, the possibility that at this point in the season he may have lost the locker room, all of those above points, I think this is still the head coach that ultimately was on the sidelines that helped lead the team to their 2021 NWSL Championship. How you don't say like a, hey, thanks, Kris, I think is kind of like curious. But that also, because of that also leads to more unfortunate speculative things. And I think one of the things you want to do, if there are no type of speculative things there, like one of the things you want to do as a club is try to make sure that you get in front of those things and go ahead and have the dismissal as clear and concrete as possible. And the fact that there are also reporters who have confirmed that the Spirit don't intend to have any additional comment is very curious. So it leads to other folks, back to where we were in 2021, where a lot of folks were making and drawing their own conclusions on things due to the way information was sort of placed out around certain dismissals or terminations or firings of head coaches in 2021. So to sort of go from Gotham FC putting out a number of statements and talking around their mutual separation and dismissal of Scott Parkinson, and sort of having statements from, their GM, their VP, and then now their former head coach, but not really having a news release about it is still kind of questionable for me. And then the Spirit kind of having nothing around it, with the exception of an 11-word tweet, is very questionable to me. But I'm not someone who's in those front offices or part of those comms departments or making those decisions. So I think in the meantime, people's curiosity is fixated on those points, and they're also fixated on the fact that when you don't have the appropriate dissemination of information, people are going to keep asking those questions. So folks are like, well, who's going to be running the trainings, or who's going to be, is there going to be an interim in place? Like, what is this going to mean? So I think a lot of folks were curious if Angela Salem was going to be someone who's going to be running point on things, because she got named as an assistant coach with this coaching staff as well, got brought into the fold. And in the interview that we had with her, said that she had these conversations with Kris Ward specifically to come in to be part of the coaching staff. So in the meantime, I guess that's the next news drop that has to come for this franchise, is who's going to be the interim in the meantime.
Yeah. And there's been rumblings that Angela Salem will be leading the practices for Washington Spirit this week, or until there's an interim head coach announced, but also rumblings that Mark Kerkorian, the club's president of soccer ops, and he's a former NCAA coach. He's won a lot of titles. He will also be one to step in and guide this team through the end of the year. But there's been nothing. These are all rumblings from reporters, great reporters doing the groundwork in Washington to figure out what's happening, but there's been nothing from the club. So speculation, I guess, at this point.
Well, we'll see. We'll have to stay tuned, right? When we get more information, we'll share that information. That's sort of how it works, unfortunately, sometimes in this league. Let's talk a little bit about trades, right? Those are still happening as well, with the transfer window quickly coming to a close. This one also had some room for folks and their takes on it as well. Kansas City Current and Gotham FC participating in a mutual trade here. The Kansas City Current go ahead and trade Victoria Pickett to Gotham FC, $200,000 in allocation money and a conditional first-round pick. I think there will be more clarity on that, and if it's going to be the natural first-round pick or the recent pick that Kansas City Current received. So there's still some conditions there, but Victoria Pickett now a part of New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC. Lisa, your reaction to this one when it dropped?
I love this trade for Gotham. I mean, it's a little bit, we talked about this yesterday, I guess. I was like, wait, I've said my take on this. We talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I guess that was off mic. This is a very interesting trade. I think $200,000 in allocation money is a lot of money for this type of player. Pickett's at her second year in the league. She was a Rookie of the Year finalist in 2021 with Kansas City last year. This is a player that did well last year, and I think has grown so much as a player on the pitch this year with Kansas City. But how can you not, when you look at what Matt Potter has thrown together at Kansas City and the players that have been brought in there, whether it's Lola Bonta in the midfield, Desiree Scott, like these are players Pickett has been playing alongside, and Kristen Hamilton, Cece Kaiser up top. The talent that's been around Pickett has truly helped her growth in this league and with Kansas City, that she's become a player that does a lot for Kansas City and helps contribute, but she's more of a link player than a player that's going to walk into a team and walk onto a field and just control everything and get it done. So that's what the interesting trade is for me. Going to Gotham, a team that really needs a player that is going to walk into that midfield and control the games, help turn things around, right? This is a Gotham side that recently let go or had a mutual goodbye with their former head coach, Scott Parkinson, brought in Hugh Menzies, former Jamaican women's international coach, in an attempt to turn things around towards the end of the year. They're growing on the investor side with Sue Bird, and they've got a lot of different parts there with the Manning coming in, NFL players into that investment side of things. And now making a move for a player like Victoria Pickett is just interesting, because I'm not sure exactly where she's going to fall in this lineup, right? Do you put her alongside Christy Mewis in that midfield and McCall Zerboni, and then it's Pickett? So does that give Mewis a little bit more freedom to push up higher into the pitch? But that's something that Pickett likes to do as well. I think it'll be really interesting to see where Pickett falls with this Gotham squad. And perhaps maybe it's not for this season and it's for next year. And Hugh Menzies is playing the long game as well as Gotham. But in terms of the player for Victoria Pickett, I think this is great for her. She's in her second year in the league. She's a consistent starter at Kansas City. To go to a big club like Gotham FC that's looking to turn things around, I think could help her and could help Pickett take that next step to be the next level player, to become a leader on a team, to be a player that is a game changer in games and play makes in the midfield. But we'll kind of see how it unwinds. I mean, Kansas City is going to miss her, I think, for sure. What do you think about this trade? Do you think we'll see Pickett getting in the lineup before we know it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you actually hit the trade button on this one if you don't intend to
for $200,000.
Yeah, for $200,000 allocation money, if you don't intend to get this player acclimated quickly, with your team. So I think it's a really good pickup for Gotham FC. I think, they've struggled this year. That goes without saying. That's an old cold take. That's not new. But I think when you're looking at specific areas or specific lines on the pitch for this Gotham FC side, this is an area in which they were trying to target, right? So if you have Pickett who could sort of get in these roles and, really be able to kind of distribute the ball around a little bit, I think that's going to benefit, the attacking players on this team. And I think maybe that perhaps cuts a little bit, takes some weight off of a player like Mewis, or away some expectations or weight off of a player like Zerboni with this Gotham FC side. So I think it's a good pickup for them. I don't know what it'll, if it'll pan out for them in 2022. This might be something that we sort of see pan out for them more in 2023. But I think, mutually speaking, if we're looking at sort of how this will impact Gotham on the pitch, I think it's all right there, like we're talking about right now. I think when you're looking at the Kansas City Current side of things, you're looking at that big lump sum of money. You're looking at that $200,000, and you're sort of wondering, okay, well, what's going to be the move with this here for Kansas City Current? Is this going to be, for a different player? Is this going to be for, for contracts that maybe they're going to want to start looking at in the offseason, because this is a Kansas City Current side that has, at the moment, a lot of really good young pieces, right? They've got a really good young player in Alex Loera, that at least Bennett is still providing off of the bench for them. Maybe these are players that they're looking at and the future of this club, looking ahead a little bit and maybe trying to say like, hey, like we have to start maybe looking at potential different contracts in the future for this current side. So it was nice to see Pickett sort of, say her farewells to Kansas City. It wasn't, a franchise that she was with for a long time, but you could sort of see how very quickly in NWSL, players are able to sort of kind of adapt and get adjusted and sort of kind of call these places, home essentially. So even though she had just spent like rookie season with them and basically nearly every game to date with this current side, that she kind of, said all her thank yous and farewells to them as well. So I would imagine that Pickett gets time immediately, or as soon as they possibly can with this Gotham FC side. But I don't imagine that might be the last, signing or trade that we hear about. We'll see. Like I said, the window's closing this week, so perhaps there will be some more news down the pipeline, and we will do our best to keep up with all that and keep everybody informed. But there's also a couple of retirements that we wanted to touch on a little bit before we took a quick break. A couple of Lionesses departing from the England women's national team. Ellen White and Jill Scott announcing their retirements. Ellen White retiring as England's all-time leading goal scorer, winning 10 club trophies with Leeds, Arsenal, Man City, and officially a women's Euro with the Lionesses. Jill Scott, 9 club trophies, 3-time Cyprus Cup winner, Arnold Clark Cup, Women's Euro, 161 caps for the Lionesses in 17 professional seasons. So congrats to them. Going out on top, quite frankly.
Huge. Yeah, definitely going out on top. And you look at Jill Scott, 35 years old, Ellen White, 33 years old. They're not necessarily at the obvious end of their careers, but I think for these players, the fact that England just won the Euros and that was such a huge moment. It was almost like a sigh of relief for those players, because they know that it was a turning point for women's football and for the sport and for the country. Huge, incredible careers by both of these players, White and Scott, and wishing them all the best in the next stage, in the next phase, hoping maybe to get them on the broadcast side of things. Love to see that player development, or on the coaching side of things. We can always use more coaches in the game, especially former female players. So love to see that. And congrats to both of them, Ellen White and Jill Scott, on their fantastic careers.
All right, we've got more to get through for you all. We're going to recap San Diego Wave versus Houston and preview Portland versus North Carolina right after a quick break.
Now streaming Celebrate South Park's 25th anniversary with performances by Primus, Ween, and Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
Can everyone hear me okay?
South Park at Red Rocks, the 25th anniversary concert. Now streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, before we get into NWSL games, we just want to extend quick congratulations to Olympic Lyon. They are the 2022 WICC winners. Lyon defeat Monterrey 4-0 in the WICC final. Lindsay Herrera, capping off an emotional return of Portland, was named player of the tournament, scored 3 goals, including 2 in the final alone. It was almost like it was written in the stars, right? So congrats to Lyon on winning the WICC once more.
It was kind of like a home game for Lindsay Herrera. Let's be real.
It was nice to see that.
It was great.
They made the announcement, over the course of the offseason that she was going to head on over to Lyon and go on contract for a couple years. And, honestly, because of that, they kind of reshifted things with her Portland contract. So she'll eventually get to make her return, right? And go ahead and continue playing with the Thorns when she wants to make her return to the States. But this was kind of nice in the sense where it's like you get that sort of kind of not just a check-in, but a little bit of a, farewell. You don't necessarily get that sometimes in the off season when you kind of make those choices for yourself as a player to move on into to the next chapter of your career. But so it was nice to really sort of see this duo of games from her in Providence Park, a place that she's not unfamiliar with at all. And we're going to preview a game with Portland in this next section of the episode. But first, we want to recap really quickly San Diego Wave and Houston Dash. This was a game that kicked off late night. It was NWSL After Dark action for everyone. We were unable to recap it because we wanted to recap the NWSL matches that had taken place to date up until that week, and also get a chance to go live to talk about the Women's Cup. Congratulations to Oil Rain on lifting that and against Racing Louisville. But in this one, Lisa, if memory serves me correct, in our preview, I believe I had this one picked as a draw, and I think you might have gone with Houston, right? We were going with the hot hand in this one.
Yes, going with the hot hand. And honestly, the way this game unfolded, I thought I was going to be right, and then I thought you were going to be right just a few seconds later. It felt like this was a very exciting late night NWSL game that I'm excited to talk about. I know after we did our Saturday night recap, we got a lot of questions on Twitter and on our lives being like, hey, what about the San Diego Houston game? Hey, we're talking about it right now. Don't worry. We were never going to let this one go by the wayside. It ends 3-1, San Diego Wave winning. So both of us wrong in our predictions. You with the draw, me with Houston winning this one. But we got to run through how this game unfolded, because 7th minute in,
quick,
Houston gets on the board and everyone gets one guess who scored. Yeah, you're right. It's Ebony Salmon. This player is just on fire right now. This goal is fantastic. San Diego can't clear it after Houston's applying so much pressure. And Salmon, she doesn't even have space to take a shot. She creates the space for herself around 4 defenders. If you watch these highlights, go back and look at them. Then she rips an incredible shot, gets on the board first in the 7th minute. But Alex Morgan, she is not to be upstaged by the young international in Ebony Salmon. 13th minute, Alex Morgan, she gets on the board and equalizes for San Diego. And that was, I think that's a good way to set the stage for this game, how it unfolded, because it was very exciting.
Quick start. It was like, so I was like, oh no, like sort of watching it. I remember you and I were like, oh no, like this game is it gonna end like in madness? Of course, as we're going live to try to talk a little bit about the Women's Cup, right? And we were in for a treat, because I remember us, getting off, finishing that, and then being able to watch the rest of this game, where quite frankly, I was most excited about, because we got to see Amira Ali extend the lead. She got the go-ahead goal for San Diego Wave in this one. Nice assist by Mackenzie Downey. A good game for her. Saw her with a pair of assists in this one, this first one for Amira Ali. And you just saw a little bit, like just enough to kind of create some chaos there for this Houston Dash side. And that was a little bit, I think, of a bit of a new challenge, I think, that we saw for this Dash side. They've been on an incredible run during this second half of the season. Obviously, Ebony Salmon is the story for them coming out of this. But watching some of these defensive breakdowns for this Dash side, I think maybe is the game that they're going to go back and look at and try to tighten some things up and say, okay, here's some areas in which we weren't able to execute as well as we wanted to, especially when you're talking about this late game goal from Sofia Jakobsen. That is not something that you want to concede so late in the game. Granted, at this point, you're already down 2-1. Now you're ending this game down 3-1 because of this late goal by Jakobsen. So I gotta say, if you're on the Dash side of things, I think there were areas here where you're looking at some of these goals, even with that Alex Morgan goal specifically. You see 3 Dash players. This is like this very, very good combo between the positioning of Amira Ali and Taylor Korniak and Sophia Smith. And you see Ali make this run into the center of the ball. You see Dash players collapsing, like 3 players collapsing on Taylor Korniak, who has an option to her left or right at this point for either Morgan or Ali. And Morgan ends up receiving the ball and is able to slot it away. And you sort of see this similar energy, this similar defensive errors kind of happening for the Dash throughout some of these goals. And I think maybe perhaps a little bit in this one, some of the midweek, action perhaps caught up to the Dash in this game on the road against San Diego.
I think that's a good way to put it. Remember, Houston did play midweek. They had a very quick turnaround, and they're a team that's coming off of a very hectic stretch that they played where, yes, they were winning games, but they were also playing consistently. And we saw them winning games 2-1, 4-2, 4-1, and now to be on the other side of that and losing 3-1 to this San Diego side, maybe a bit of a reset. But like in terms of the standings in this one, San Diego's still second, Houston's still third in the Golden Boot race. Alex Morgan is first with 12 goals, Smith with 11, Ordonez with 10, and then there's Ebony Salmon with 8 goals on the year in just how many games that she's played with this Houston side. It's truly fantastic. But I think the breakdowns for Houston came on the defensive side, which is something that this Dash side really struggled with at the beginning of the year. And more recently, they've picked it up. But frankly, they're still conceding goals that they played in, right? Against Gotham, they conceded 1. Against OL Reign, they conceded 1. Against Gotham, they conceded 2. So they've always been conceding goals, but it's the fact that their production on the offensive side of it has been successful. But we just saw this San Diego side come back to their form that we saw them in early in this season. When you look at some of the players that Casey Stoney has lined up, even someone like with Carly Telford in goal, who has done fantastic stepping into that role in place of Kaylin Sheridan, who should be back this weekend, but really a fantastic job by Telford. That's such a seamless transition from this. And I want to give a shout out to Mackenzie Doniak, a player that subbed in on this game to 50th minute or so. She created the most chances for the San Diego side. She ends up getting an assist on the Amira Ali goal and on the Jakobsen goal. So that's a player that's done really well for San Diego and Casey Stoney.
Houston Dash rising and falling in the same week. What a season we're witnessing in this one, bumping up to second place and then closing out in third place after the loss to San Diego. We've got a midweek match taking place this week. It's going to be kicking off tomorrow on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. North Carolina Courage hosting this one. They're going to be welcoming the Portland Thorns. Who do you got in this one, Lisa?
So this match is a big one. We saw these two sides play just a few weeks ago in early August to a 3-3 draw. And Portland is red hot right now with what they've been able to do, just picking up points week in and week out. And North Carolina coming off of their first win in a very long time of that streak. This is going to be a great game, and I'm really excited for it. I don't think it's going to be another draw that we just saw from these two sides. I want to say Portland's going to win, but there's something in me that wants to lean towards North Carolina. So I'm going with my gut. And I'm going to say North Carolina, even if all the signs point to Portland with the streak that they've been able to go on, the form that players like Sophia Smith is in. But there's just something about this North Carolina side with players like Diana Ordonez, Caroline and Dabinia in the midfield alongside Denise O'Sullivan that are just dominant. It's a midfield battle between Portland and North Carolina. And if North Carolina wins that, they will win this game. So I'm going to stick with the Courage in this one.
All right. I listen, I think it's fun to go with it. I think when you're looking at their top line, when you're looking at players like Dabinia and Caroline and the season that Diana Ordonez is putting together, they're playing some exciting attacking offensive soccer, right? And I don't know if we are going to get that 6-goal draw that they got earlier, like you said, but looking at Portland and the window of time that they came off of, they just participated in the WICC. I think they're going to be taking the win in this one. I'm going to go opposite. I'm going to go with Portland in this one. I think it's a different opposition that this Courage side is going up against. I think, the win that they got against Chicago is good for their confidence, in terms of the games that the Courage have remaining in front of them. And the potential to maybe, go on a little bit of a run, definitely play spoiler against some other teams. But you're talking about going against a really depleted, struggling kind of Chicago Red Stars team right now that kind of doesn't really have the personnel to sort of keep up, it looks like, with the remainder of this regular season. And you're going to be going up against the number one team in the league right now. It's a little bit of difference in oppositions here. So while I do imagine that this trio of Dabinia and Caroline and Ordonez will make things difficult, I have to imagine that the defensive side of things for Portland are going to be a little bit more secure and a little bit more locked up compared to that Chicago Red Stars team. And I think that is going to be the difference in this game. And I do imagine Sophia Smith wants to get back to scoring in NWSL matches. So I got her with a goal on this one too. So I'm going to go for Portland in this one with Sophia Smith making it a difficult night for that Courage back line. But before we close out, it wouldn't be a live show if there wasn't some extra breaking news. So before we go, yes, and there has in fact been another trade announced in the NWSL. Valerie Govine heads to Houston from North Carolina Courage. The Dash will send $25,000 in allocation money to the Courage and a conditional 2024 second round draft pick. So we will see more options for this Houston Dash side as they continue to navigate their regular season. But that is it for us here on Attacking Third today. Thanks everybody for joining us and listening along to today's episode. Thanks everyone who voted for us in the People's Podcast Choice Awards. Check your emails to see if you've been selected to vote for us in the final round, and please vote. Lisa and I will be back with more on Thursday to recap Portland Thorns versus North Carolina Courage and more. Subscribe to us on YouTube to know whenever we go live. For Sandra, Herrera, and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.